Hey everyone, and welcome back. I'm Seiben again here for the Aether Hub, bringing you more Magic the Gathering lore. Nizahan here at the Hub brought you guys the top 10 Minotaur cards in MTG. Link to that video in the description below. And today, I figured I'd teach you guys the story of all these bull-headed humanoids across the multiverse. But fair warning, bull-headed isn't as accurate a description of Minotaurs as you'd think. For the most part though, yeah, that's basically the gist of them. Minotaurs are humanoids with strong muscular builds, looking like men at around the midpoint, but more like a bull everywhere else, with heads, faces, and snouts of a more bovine nature, sporting some very impressive horns, and 2 hooves on strong legs. Minotaur are often depicted as quick to anger with real temper issues, using brute strength to overpower anything that may set them off, which can be almost anything. While not regarded for their intelligence, often characterized as rather slow, Minotaur are basically at the same level as humans in the brains department, even capable of learning magic. Most Minotaur in Magic the Gathering align with either red or black mana, although they've also been seen across the entire spectrum, but those are outliers. Minotaur embody a rather passionate decision-making process, thus their association with red. Also, red capes, bulls. Okay, so that one's more of a joke, but it's still a connection, dang it. Black mana, on the other hand, is a little harder to pinpoint, but some Minotaur have been known for their cruelty and utter lack of humanity. Probably shouldn't be injecting a cow joke when talking about the complete mayhem of unbridled combat, but hey, that's how we roll here. Now, let's check out some of the more prominent Minotaur you can find across the multiverse. On the city plane of Ravnica, Minotaur make their home in the quarters and barracks of the Boros Legion. You'd think a group of creatures as strong and passionate as these would more identify with Gruul, but nope. On Ravnica, Minotaur are prideful, disciplined, and honor-bound, perfect soldiers for the Boros. They're known here as the Ordrune, and often carry around large hammers for intimidation purposes, and to sometimes perform the hammer duty. Just the sound of that makes me uneasy. While looking completely scary, the Ordrune are more or less the peacekeepers of Ravnica, entrusted with dealing with minor disturbances, transferring prisoners, and in general, making sure everyone's playing by the same rules. Believe me, seeing a 7-foot-tall cow wielding a hammer is more than enough to stop a bar fight. Other Minotaur on Ravnica have set it upon themselves to join the Izzet League, although their purpose is a lot less clear. These are Minotaur who are more intellectually inclined, with a curiosity not easily sated. While none that I know of have ever invented or discovered any great scientific breakthroughs, we do know that those of the Izzet League love brushing their horns with a fresh coat of Mizium, a durable, fireproof metal invented by the Izzet. On the wild world of Zendikar, where the land itself is a force to be reckoned with, Minotaur are much more in line with the traditional ideal of the race. They live in small, shamanistic tribes, wild, impulsive, and aggressive. Many others on Zendikar liken them to nothing more than beasts, and for some, that's not completely wrong. Some tribes will attack anything they see, lashing out in terrible fits of rage. Others practice dark, shamanistic magic, warping the world with crude lithomancy in order to survive. Yet some Minotaur here have cultivated a sense of civilization. These are known as the Ondu. The Ondu have developed strong social bonds spurred on by a sense of duty and honor. As Zendikar has fallen twice now to the Eldrazi Titans, some Ondu Minotaurs have joined other allies of the plane in its defense, able to take orders, work together, and be mostly civil in the war effort, unlike their more wild cousins. On the desert world of Amonkhet, Minotaur are more in line with those we see on Ravnica, or the Ondu. They're a civilized race capable of living, working, and most importantly, trading with their fellow citizens within the magically protected city of Noctamon. With gods on Amonkhet, you'd think that the Minotaur all worship one single deity, right? Well actually, like the rest on this plane, they all respect and cherish each of the gods collectively. Some may have devoted themselves to Hazoret or Bantu, but there isn't a single god they all worship. They've also become quite adept at magic on Amonkhet, but rather than traditional spells, these Minotaur prefer a force that summons magical flaming weapons for them to use during their trials. Pretty handy, but a lot less practical. Why throw a flaming spear? Just fireball it! Oh, and you've probably noticed, these Minotaur look a lot different from those we've seen thus far. I just can't put my finger on it. Oh yeah, I see. They have ram heads rather than that of a bull. We don't know much about why this difference occurred, at least story-wise anyway, but it's probably just a result of evolution in response to the harsh conditions of Amonkhet. Art-wise, Minotaur are a race that can be played around with, especially in terms of how they're depicted. The ram heads are probably an aesthetic choice by wizards to better represent the Egyptian inspiration they were going with. Traveling now to the once shattered world of Alara, the Minotaur here were pretty much secluded on the survival of the fittest shard of Naya. Here, they banded together in isolated tribes and looked out for their own. They're strong, passionate warriors, but not without compassion. Still, very little was ever really known about them. After the conflicts occurred and the shards reassembled into Alara, the Minotaur of Naya were free to explore their long-lost neighbors. Some stumbled into Esper, and the more magically inclined among them decided to stay and learn what secrets they could. Much like the Minotaur of the Izzet League, those new to Esper grew an obsession with coating their horns with Ethereum, the plane's own unique form of element. Theros, another world ruled by gods, is home to Minotaur of a more primal nature. Unlike Amonkhet, where the Minotaur are collectively civilized and worship no particular god, those of Theros are blood-hungry, bestial servants of Mogis, god of slaughter. This god is the twin brother to a centaur god, Aroas, god of victory. While Aroas embodies honorable combat and glory, Mogis is associated with slaughter, bloodshed, murder, violence, and even cannibalism. This is the rage that can overtake any soldier in combat, turning them into nothing more than animals, like a Minotaur. As such, the Minotaur here are a slave to the whims of Mogis, fiercely combative with almost no skeleton of a society. They kill, pillage, and eat the flesh of the fallen, human or Minotaur. They have basic instincts that react to primal behavioral cues, experiencing effects known as meat hunger, which is sort of like being hangry, but having to feed off human flesh to feel satisfied. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna stick with Qdoba. Next, we arrive on the plane of Dominaria, home to a number of different tribes, but with two major sects with a long history of hostility. First, let's start with the Herloon tribe. The Herloon tribe is basically a warrior culture, training and praising battle as a way of life, even celebrating it. Yet, unlike other, more brutal Minotaur we've seen throughout the multiverse, the Herloon fight with honor and respect, being best known for singing hymns after a battle in remembrance of those who died, not only their own, but the enemies as well. Dead on both sides are shown respect. The Herloon are primitive and practice a shamanistic religion that worships the life and death cycle of the plane. And, fun fact, Herloon Minotaur was the first Minotaur ever printed in MTG, coming out all the way back in Alpha. By comparison though, the Talrum Minotaur are much more aggressive and isolationist. They possess superior magical abilities, especially in crafting illusions, and worship a violent god of war. Unlike the Herloon, the Talrum are terribly destructive when it comes to war, showing no mercy for the enemy and giving no respect to the dead. For their primitive beliefs and untrimmed manes, the Talrum consider themselves the most superior Minotaurs on Dominaria, likening the Herloon to savages. Yet despite this difference, both clans found their numbers decimated by the Phyrexian invasion, the ultimate equalizer. And finally we reach the last stop on our journey, Ulgratha, a small, far-flung plane from a less than stellar set, but packing a lot of meaningful Minotaurs. Homelands was the first time this creature type was heavily featured in the set's storyline. As such, we got some of our greatest individuals from this plane, since we didn't even have a legendary until Amonkhet. The Minotaur here are known as the Anaba, and they live in the Kura Ridge of the Koksun Mountains. They're an isolated and primitive race, keeping records of their people's pasts using hieroglyphics on the walls of their cavernous homes. They're also the most awesome of the Minotaur in MTG, because, well, they're summoned by a didgeridoo! I'm not even lying here guys, this is for real. Despite this humble lifestyle, the Anaba Minotaur are not nearly as dangerous and deadly as those on other planes. The Anaba are a spiritual people, following the call of the spirits and dancing with the elements as their mainly female shamans bring forth storms. Sounds great and peaceful, right? Well, things always get a little complicated in MTG, especially when you throw a couple planeswalkers into the mix. Yes, that's right, the Anaba of Ulgratha lay claim to a Minotaur planeswalker, the only one I'm really aware of, and his name is Sandru. There isn't a lot of history or backstory on Sandrew, only that he was a close friend to Faraz, the guardian protector of Ulgratha, planeswalker in his own right, and husband to Sarah, like Sarah Angel Sarah. Faraz was with the Minotaur when his planeswalker spark first ignited, during a fight against the giant spider. Things only started to go really downhill when love got involved, because, of course, a love triangle has to be the downfall of a clan of Minotaur. Sandrew had fallen in love with another planeswalker named Christina of the Woods, and she loved him back. Yet, not all were happy with this budding relationship. A real nasty planeswalker by the name of Taysir still had a thing for Christina, even though she left him for being, a villain. So, he did what all jealous exes do: capture, torture, enslave, and decimate Sandrew's home and people. Drawn out, the Minotaur was then banished to an unknown plane, which would take him a millennium to escape. But he eventually got out early on good behavior and a little help from a Mox Beacon. Oh, and there's one more special case I should probably tackle on the tail end here, and that's the curious case of Zadru the Greathearted. Here's her official lore. She was born into a warrior family, lithe in combat like her father, but her path led her away from war. When she was young, a plague cursed her people, leaving behind it a wake of death. She learned painfully that not every fight can be won by the sword. In desperation, she offered her own life in exchange for her people's, and thanks to her willing sacrifice, the curse was broken. Now she is revered among her people for her patience, benevolence, and hard-won wisdom. And that's about it. The whole goat head thing is probably similar to why those on Amonkhet look like rams. A Minotaur doesn't always strictly mean you have to have a bull head. Outside of this statement, nothing else is really known about her particular people or even what plane she came from. We'll have to wait and see if it's expanded upon in the future. And there you go guys, the story and history of Minotaur in Magic the Gathering. Are you a fan of this fast-beating bestial race? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video and want to support the Hub here on YouTube, consider throwing this video a like and subscribing for more awesome MTG content. As always guys, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time here on the Aether Hub.